everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. We're going to go ahead and get started. Can everyone hear me? I know it's kind of windy today, so it feels nice though. So today is our second panel here on the Ogury yacht. We're talking about creativity and data. Relationships data is complicated, so that's what we're going to talk about. I'm going to let our panelists introduce themselves, starting with Chris, my colleague at Ogury.
Yeah, hi. So I'm Chris. I'm in charge of the data and insights and also the creative at Ogury, which gives basically a flavor to my vision on these two topics.
Hi, I'm Jolene Delisle. I run the branding agency, The Working Assembly. We're based in New York. We work with clients such as Compass, Klarna, Amazon, Pepsi, MassMutual.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ali Amarsi. I lead strategy for the commerce practice globally at Publicis Group.
Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle Futterman, and I lead the digital investment team at Verizon.
Great. Thank you guys so much for being here. So a lot has changed when it comes to both creative and data. How do you kind of leverage these changes and everything that's happening with the data that we now have access to, Jolene, in your everyday practice when it comes to coming up with campaigns, creative?
Yeah, for sure. So I think we use data now more than ever, especially to develop briefs. So I think really thinking about how to take real-time data insights and then actually leverage that for the work that we do. So things, the basic things that we used to do would just be getting demographic and geographic data, but now I think we're using it to really understand like emotional and quantitative things, such as like what's really driving like behavior and what's shifting behavior, and understanding all that. So I think it has been complicated, but it's also been, I think, a real merge between having data now really drive creative insights and being actually able to leverage it for the greater good.
Well, I think that brings up a good point that not all data is created equal, right? So there's first-party data, third-party data. Chris, from your perspective, what are the drawbacks of leveraging first-party data?
So first, creative is generating data. And data is fueling also the creativity and the way we should address an audience. So there is nothing incompatible. The thing which is happening with first party, of course, in some cases, maybe the impact on the audience and the use of this data. We are in a world of privacy. It's really important to take care of how we address the users, not being too much intrusive into the data collection. But I think that definitely there is a breach, and it's funny to see that after 20 years back, we were saying, okay, we have to separate media agency with creative agency. I think it's an end of an era. And now we're more coming back into something where we have to gather everything, because digital also is enabling us and is enabling wonderful thing in terms of creativity. And it's just not only having a display or video, it's how can people interact with the creative. And for doing that, of course, the data is helping a lot. And all this is also fostering another important topic, which is attention, that recently appeared. So I think that both are really fueling each one, and so that's what we try to do also at Ogury.
Actually, one thing you said, that this end of an era. Sorry, Sabina. I know that the last question you want to ask us was, what's the lasting impression you want to leave on the audience at Cannes? I'm going to skip to that. Like, for creatives, make a friend in media. So my background is in creative. I was a planner for a long time. And we had to scrape to find something interesting. We're judged on our insights, we're judged on our ideas, we're judged on our creative. And it's truly from anecdote and the stuff you expose yourself to. Meanwhile, 2 floors above, the people at Starcom or Zenith, not that I'm bitter, have the best tools. They have scale, they have an understanding, they have something to back selling in those ideas. So my advice, if you can't merge into one agency, which I think they all should, and I know that you have, but make a buddy in media. They got the best tools. But the truth is, they need your help to come up with a great idea, because they can get you scale, they can get you placement, but they're truly lacking that narrative to turn that network into something much, much stronger.
Yeah, and I'll say, I think some of the things that we've seen in the past couple of years, like Google, you're in search, Spotify Wrapped, these are all data-driven creative ideas and executions, right? So one of my clients at OkCupid, they're creating real-time content based on on user preferences. So things that you're searching for on a dating app, like last night, they're now serving you creative ads next week based on that. So I think we're just going to see that more and more.
So Michelle, from your perspective, how are the environments and the formats kind of responding to these changes?
Yeah, I think it's important, especially for the publishers who don't have a robust first-party data stack. I think it's important to really focus on, there's two areas of focus. First is contextual, so really being in the right environment, and also to always point the attention, the attention metrics, the high impact type of units. Those are what's getting kind of the traction, and really focusing on those attention metrics versus like, back in the day, click rate, stats rate, what's getting, I think, advertisers more excited, and publishers, I think, are more encouraged if they don't have a robust first-party tech stack, but they actually have this to offer to advertisers.
So that's actually a good segue, because I heard a couple people talk about measurement and attention. Ali, from your perspective, how are brands thinking about measurement?
So right now, I work in commerce. I think our big new thought, not even new thought, but our thought that we want to impart on all of our clients is we should be measuring incrementality, because all these systems like the Amazons of this world, or Google Shopping, or these places where transactions are happening because they draw a lot of traffic. So you want to be able to compare what happened since you did something versus had you done nothing. And we want to show that delta so that we can justify the actions that we're looking to take. But to the point that you just made about attention and how I think that we should be measuring in the future, this is the Cannes Festival of Creativity, but I think this year is the Festival of Generative AI. I think it's the hot topic, and I think the truth is, generative AI, there's a high risk that our world be innovated with like garbage. It's so easy to mass produce content, and that's what they're discussing over there, that very quickly it's going to be a world of quantity, and we're going to have to get to a world of quality. And I think that'll only happen with knowing what is valuable attention, what is real attention, the right targeting, because we're going to have to have brands serve as curators, as ways in, and just like trusted sources. Otherwise, we're just going to you can mass produce 50 million targeted messages to someone, not targeted messages, sorry, varied messages, and just shotgun approach. But if the whole world shotguns, it's going to be a mess. So we're going to have to clean up that mess, and hopefully brands can do that, and we can measure accordingly, which is, what was a meaningful connection, what led to action, and what made a difference.
Michelle, how are you seeing your brands kind of bridging that gap from what they're measuring now to what they're going to be measuring in the future?
Yeah, I think, to Ali's point, it's interesting because measurement, at least from a digital perspective, has always been there, especially from a lower funnel commerce standpoint. But we're seeing more digital brand equity metrics really be focused in the traditional media space as well. It's kind of at the forefront, even from a linear standpoint. We're talking about how do we extend brand equity? What is the incrementality on that? So I think that's a really interesting shift that if you're not traditionally in a digital platform, it's an interesting shift that advertisers are making. I do think that we are focused and we're making sure that our advertisers, again, to Ali's point, we need to make sure that the creative that is created for the target is the right one. And I think advertisers are still behind in prioritizing what their priorities are. They're very quick to abandon their core and focus on the next dollar that they spend. But I think it's important to make sure that you're not only messaging your core, but you're also messaging that next user and that new user. And I think that's the interesting thing that we're seeing.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. This kind of shift towards thinking about brand equity as a core and brand health as a core investment. Wow. Still going to get blown away.
When did wild.
And Jolene, I wanted to ask you from a creative perspective, when you're talking about KPIs and measurement as you're developing the creative, as Michelle mentioned, that can sometimes, and Ali, we're getting to a point where people are bombarded with not necessarily the best creative content, and that's what you specialize in, right? So how are they thinking about measurement? Are they talking about attention? And what other KPIs are important?
Yeah, and I think that's particularly true as far as conversion too, right? So it's really easy to get brand awareness now, especially with this idea of being able to create content at scale and being able to bombard your message. So yeah, awareness is going to be up. But I think really this idea of curation, really good content, how do we actually cut through is where I think things like ChatGPT can't replace like really good creative, because what we're able to do is mine through those insights, and really develop something that feels like targeted and personal. But for sure, we're going to just see over the next couple of years just tons, a blanket of really bad work, probably.
So, yeah, hopefully then that will drive more engagement and more attention. And I always think of Chris as our king of attention. So tell us, what are the kind of the best practices when it comes to attention measurement? What should our clients be thinking about? What questions should they be asking?
So first, before asking attention and delivering high performances on attention, I think one of the key KPI of a campaign is reaching the right audience. And with attention, we are shifting to tracking users with cookie, with IDs, into something that now only attention matters. I think that first, if you don't reach the right audience, you're just wasting money. Then after, attention is really important. But the thing is that today there is no standard into the attention. And that's the real issue into this landscape. So speaking with more than 8 different vendors on attention, they all pretend to have the holy grail on attention, but there is no standardized definition. And I think this is a big issue for ourselves, because basically we have to understand how they are measuring this attention, and sometimes it's not that easy, even for them to explain us how they are proceeding with that. So I would really push, and we are really aiming for having a standardization on what really means attention. What is the definition of attention? So everyone can work around that and deliver good KPIs on attention. Now, attention is one thing again, but interaction, and it's part of attention. How can we have more interaction within the ad? How can we create a better experience for the users that goes beyond just the click? I think the click is also something that we have to reconsider. The swipe, the slide, everything, every interaction on the ad is to be considered and is part of the attention and really matters. So that's how we look at the market, standardization around attention. So we have finally one definition, but also, and even more important, let's not forget that if you don't reach the right audience, you can have a high attention, you're just still wasting money.
I also think, too, just to build on that, for the last couple of years, we've been talking a lot about content and value and adding value to consumers and creating content that's entertaining and engaging. I think now that's really saturated, and what we're really going to see is a shift. I know companies that I work with are really thinking about how to now take the data that we're seeing from engagement and actually creating utility and purpose. So things like we saw in the past, like Uber creating Uber Eats, that was based on data that they collected where people were looking for like late night eating solutions, right? And so I think now with like a client of ours, which is Amazon, over the pandemic, they saw tons of people creating at-home videos around Amazon finds. It was very difficult to find things within Amazon. And so one of the things that my team is doing is we're creating a whole platform for creators and influencers to be able to monetize and deliver off of those Amazon home finds. So companies are reacting to data and now understanding how to not just create content and value, but actually creating utility and purpose and monetization for their consumers. I think that's the big shift we're going to see.
I think to add to that point, though, I think that's really important for advertisers and clients who are technologically, I think, like at the forefront and advanced. But I think the scale still isn't there, and you're still going to have traditional advertisers who want the scale, and that's, I think, the challenge is like how do we make the traditional advertisers and clients get up to speed as the digital first clients, and that I think is the challenge.
Yeah, so when we talk about data, there's definitely sort of this 800-pound gorilla in the room, which is this idea of cookies going away very soon. And I'm sure that you guys are talking about this with your clients already. And this idea of brand reputation and how important brand reputation is, and the fact that it's potentially at risk if they continue to use cookies. Mm-hmm. How are your clients, how are they responding to this? What are their feelings on this? And is it impacting how you guys choose to spend media dollars or even create and have access to data to create campaigns? Michelle.
I think it's definitely impacting. I think there's a bit of a panic, right? Of where do we spend our next dollar from like a tech perspective? Do we invest in our own tech stack? Do we invest in an identity-based solution? And like if we're putting all of our dollars and eggs in one basket, is it the right one? Because there's so much uncertainty that I think the industry is going under right now. So I think it's really making sure that at least from our client perspective, they're informed and that they're not just spending money for tech just to spend money. Sometimes it doesn't make sense, and sometimes it does, right? And it depends on what you're going to use that tech for. Sometimes it's a little bit more of analysis paralysis versus like really investing that money in the right creative and the right content and putting that creative in the right areas. So I think we're guiding our clients to make sure that the next dollar they spend is the right next dollar and that they're the most informed, but no one really knows like truly where it's going and like what's really going to stick. So I think like just making sure that we're informed is important.
So in terms of the right creative going into the right places, obviously Ogury plays in a lot of places, top of the funnel and then also down conversion. We've had discussions about the fact that clients do come to us because we can reach certain audiences that they can't always reach. So what are your thoughts on that? I know you have a lot.
So, no, but to come back on your point on brands using too much data, what can be the impact on that? I think we've recently made a research with IDC where basically we've seen that 60% of the advertisers, which means that still 40% don't consider that, but 60% of the advertisers consider that using too much data is a brand reputational risk. Why? If you are Pepsi-Cola, Coca-Cola, whatever, you have to collect the data that is directly linked with what you are doing. And from the user's perspective, I don't think anyone would want that, and I'm not telling their name, but XYZ brand is collecting too much data about you. You don't need to go into this kind of sharing too much data, and this is where privacy comes in, and it's even stronger than any regulation. People pushing back the fact that they are chased, that they are tracked, and they don't want that anymore. It's a move that is really important that we can see. That's also why we completely shifted our technology into ID-less and cookie-less, because we see that there is a reputational risk for the brands who sometimes don't realize that it's too much data that is collected. And users don't want that anymore. So it's a real market trend, and we also have to adapt that and to understand that we need respect of the users and provide and protect their privacy, because this is key to still keep the trust that they have in the brands. That's our role in terms of professional of marketing, of media. This is how we also have to educate our clients and to make them know that there is a risk at some point that they have difficulties or they go into press for bad reasons.
Where does brand reputation fit into your conversations with your clients, Jolene or Ali?
Reputation or like brand equity?
I think they're very much linked. I think
Yeah.
brand equity and reputation. Yes.
Actually, to the point of too much data, I think there's also a risk of like not having enough. And because if I made my way all the way to your experience, no matter where it is, whether you found me or I found you, it better be valuable, to your point before. Because there are so many places, and again, coming through a commerce lens, there is a place where I can go and buy your product. It is Amazon. There is another place I can go buy your product. There are so many places that drive all this traffic that if I show up to a new place, be it your D2C or experiences where you're finding me, it better be more valuable than the ones I have the alternative for. And I think that is informed by data. That personalization, that scale, the feeling like, oh my God, it gets me, and the messaging hits hard where that brand equity is built, I think it's very important. In fact, when we speak creative commerce, we always speak creative and commerce. We don't want to be focusing on too many sales at the expense of brand. That's short-sighted. But then to only develop brand at the expense of commerce is irresponsible, right? So it's about balance, I feel. So too much data, I get it. Like, it might seem creepy, but, and don't quote me, but you kind of be a little creepy to show that, like, you get me, right? So, like, I'd skew the side of, like, intimate. creepy is the wrong word, but intimate, not creepy, would probably be good.
So what's the appropriate amount of creepiness?
Intimacy,
that we
intimacy.
wanna go
I
after?
totally edited that in real time. Let's call it closeness. But yes, I think that closeness
Shared
is necessary.
values.
Yeah, using it for predictability and to suggestions and things again that add value. But I do think that part of the conversation that's underlying to this whole chat GPT and generative AI is that we all as marketers have to just be a lot more accountable. And we also have to be way more responsible. So we have to there's just going to be people who, everyone's just going to know where the dollars are being spent and how it's actually delivered or performing.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'd be naive to say that AI isn't contributing to data and how we collect it. How are creative centers of excellence leveraging this? Are you guys leveraging it in your everyday practices at this point? Is it playing a role right now? Will it play a role?
Yeah, I think right now it's really kind of at the earlier stage where we're using it for briefs or to try to create new value territories to explore. But I think we're going to see it more and more used as like as a driver of creative ideas. So I think that's what I'm excited about.
I think it's a good test as well because it's ironic that one half of the world is using a ChatGPT to create tons of content, but the other half of the world is using ChatGPT to summarize a ton of content.
Curate.
To curate and to just be like, yo, here's 5 paragraphs. Like, can you please just tell me the gist of it? There's an irony to it. Like maybe we just skip all this and just be a bit more direct, be a bit more useful, be a bit more close.
Intimate.
Intimate.
Not creepy.
Michelle, do you have anything you want to add?
I think I agree. I think like anything in this industry, things get oversaturated, right? And the key is to really find that right middle ground. And depending on the client, the advertiser, the publisher, it has to be organic. It has to feel right. And when it's forced, I think consumers now are so savvy that they see it right away. So I think it makes our job a bit tougher, but at the same time, we need to make sure that we are truly in the right environment.
Chris, how do you see future technologies kind of supporting this innovations, data collection? How are we thinking about it at Ogury?
Every day. I think it's finding the right balance between not collecting too much data, but the right level of data. Amaze create emotion with the users, with real creatives that are impacting, that are generating fun, engagement, and it's finding this whole balance between the data, which is of course fueling the targeting, because if you're not targeting, basically again you are spending money directly into the trash. So it's finding the right balance and also keeping the privacy of the users and have an impact with the creativity and use also what's the beautiful thing into the digital, which we're not only speaking about standard display, standard video. We have the capability, to interact, to have some configurators, to engage the users more and more into the ad. I feel that the experience for a while was I want some clicks so I can have some landing into the advertiser's website. It should not be considered as the only KPI for a campaign, because the interaction that you can have into the ad is also very interesting. Also because of the regulation. The first thing, if you have a click that happens when you are clicking, when you are landing into the advertiser page, is a consent. Is it what you want? No, it's not. So basically having this experience within the ad, using the technology, having fun, interact with the users is probably, yes, the best.
The next wave, potentially.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's interesting, because you're saying, okay, the click is not the holy grail anymore. We want to keep people in the ad. We don't necessarily want to drive them to our client's, page or asset. Ali, how do you feel about that coming from the commerce side?
I mean, the ultimate scoreboard, I feel, is the cash register. I think that makes sense. But I also think that to think that everything leads to sale is like wishful thinking. So I think that we do go about briefs and reframing for a commerce goal. Sometimes it is about adoption, like conversion. It can be sales. It can be getting people into an experience and keeping them there. There's a very close connection from commerce to CRM, because we also do see it as irresponsible to like make all these efforts to sell like one chocolate bar. If that chocolate bar can hopefully lead to a data point received or a relationship started, that can be very valuable. So, that does translate to other KPIs. Dollars are like a known KPI that we can all measure. We care about them, we receive them, we use them. I think it'd be great to have just as famous or a concentration on another KPI that we can all agree on. I think valuable attention can be one. So that, hopefully every brief can be like, yeah, we want to make the client rich, but we also want to give them that quality of attention. Hammering, from all these disciplines, if we were to all just care about dollars and attention, could actually make quite a big impact on our industry. It would funnel and filter a lot of the broader conversations that may be taking us in the wrong places.
Can I just add to that? So I think Chris made a great point. I think from a upper funnel standpoint, Ali talked about more commerce, but from an upper funnel standpoint, I think it's important to really make sure that we're listening to our publishers and acting as the liaisons on truly what the publisher and what their user base is looking for, and making sure that the brand is truly authentic. I think there's a dichotomy of what the brand thinks that they value and they are about versus like what their actual users and clients are interested in. And I think leaning on publishers, leaning on social media, leaning on influencers, and making sure that their brand comes out authentic is really important. And that's, I think, what we, from an agency perspective, are focusing more on is like how to make sure that like the brand thinks that they have a client and that's their next best dollar, but like we need to make sure that that's the right next dollar, and it's spent in the right environment with the right creative.
And to Ali's original point around media too, is that like, yes, that could be those are like the check boxes that brands oftentimes think they need to do, which is publisher content, social media, influencers, but that might not be what the data says to do. And to be okay with pivoting.
Okay, well, we're wrapping up our panel today. We've got one last question. One piece of advice for your data and creative strategy. Go.
I gave mine.
Yeah,
Find a
you
friend in
already
media.
gave
They
it.
have the tools that we've all been craving. Half of the stuff in there would be more real, more interesting if you had a data buddy, a media buddy, and a tech buddy that can help you get to a point where you can then deliver your story that will carry people through an experience.
And I would say that data and creativity can't live in silos, but they also, one can't overpower the other. So it's more a matter of finding the right balance and responsibility.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think making sure the pendulum doesn't swing too far one way or the other, and making sure that both are informing each other, so that we are really providing the right insights and the best user experience.
Yeah, and that's why we are gathering the two departments within Ogury to make them work together. Definitely, this is our key message, and to make them understand that they both have to learn from each other. And it was funny for me last week to speak with my designers, and basically they were saying, "Oh, but wait, can you give me back after the impact that my creative has had when it was running?" And so were people sliding, swiping? Can I get that back so I can improve my creative for the next time and have a virtuous cycle that is going to be like iterating and helping each one doing a better job in the end for the benefit of the user and for the respect also of the privacy of the user, which is key.
What was it? Intimacy? Is that the word?
Yes.
So that's actually also the lesson learned here, right? So we all need to work together better.
Yeah, come to the south of France and learn about intimacy. That happened on a yacht.
Awkward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.